Welcome to the upstreamlife.com. I'm your founder and editor, Vishal Krishna. I've loved drones all my life, obviously through movies, science fiction, of course, but things are real in India now. I've got the founder of Scandron, Arjun, with me. Arjun's going to tell you what he does. What do you guys do, Arjun?
So at Scandron, we design, develop, manufacture drones, and we try to solve problems in the industry using drones.
And you're in the logistics space.
Logistics is where we are focused to solve specific problems for the logistics industry.
Okay, they have a specific phrase. They call it mid-mile journeys, right?
So we do mid-mile deliveries, mid-mile logistics. That's where we are focused on.
Okay, go check out the interview to understand what it really means. By the way, calling out my sponsors, check out finverse.universe. They are changing the way you study finance, okay? And their app is called finverse.guru. Download it. You can be a guitar player, you can be a rock star, but you still need to know money to actually go build a business or build your career. So check them out. Again, it's finverse.guru in the comments and description below. And check out this interview with Arjun. Enjoy it. Arjun, how are you?
I'm good. Thanks, Vishal.
Hey man, I'm a fan of drones, but more from the science fiction thing. I see a lot of these in movies. It's always good to meet a person who's selling drones for a livelihood. I want to talk about Scandron. Beautiful name. You want to tell me how it started?
So Scandron, I've been doing drones for a very long time, about 17, 18 years now. And I've had a journey through various companies, various startups, backed by some bigger companies, until in its current form, what is Scandron. We started in May 2022 is when Scandron actually started. And before that, we were a division of a larger company and then split out as a startup for various benefits, business purposes.
That's a good idea, right? The larger company was supporting you in running the operation, and that's when you decided that, okay, there's a benefit in doing this business, and you moved out. For that, I want to know, what does Scandron solve?
So Scandron, basically, we look at the industry and we try to find areas where drones will actually solve an existing problem or bring an efficiency in our current process. We don't do drones for the sake of doing drones. So we actually go out, we look at the oil industry, we look at logistics, we look at the defense industry, and we kind of found a niche and said there's nobody working on this, and that's what we'll solve with drones.
Okay, give us examples. You gave me 5-6 verticals that you go after. Everybody in India is now, there are apparently 250 drone companies, right? But you made a point earlier to me that not all of them will make money. It's about making money. And you gave me some prime example. Oil and gas is one prime example. How can Scandron help these companies?
For example, when I started out drones in its current form, right? So we analyzed the oil industry, figured where we could bring some efficiency into what they were doing, and then developed a process for doing that, and then approached them. So for the oil industry, we primarily do drone-based inspection services. Now there are two types. One is we do external inspections, which is when the equipment is running, all the assets are running, and we can use thermography to actually find hot spots, any cracks that might be there, any leaks that might be there, and then they can fix those easily. Then we have a very, very unique product where we do confined space inspections. For example, during shutdowns, right, they need to inspect the equipment from inside. They have furnaces which are about as big as this building, and they have chimneys that are 100, 120 meters high, and they have to be inspected from inside. So typically, if you want to do this, right, it takes about a week for them to shut down the equipment because they have to lower the temperature and pressure and then shut it down. Then they flush it with steam. Then they flush it with nitrogen, then they flush it with steam, then they put oxygen, then they open a manhole, a person goes inside, then they'll put scaffolding, then they'll put lighting, then the inspection starts. So you've already wasted about 2-3 weeks doing this. In our confined space, we have a specific drone that we use. So once they flood it with nitrogen, they just open a manhole, we go inside, the drone carries its own lighting system. Half an hour, the entire inspection is done. If there is a problem, they will continue to open it. If there's no problem, the drone comes out, they shut it down, they're back in service. You've saved about a month in time and costs.
Oh, that's the efficiency that you bring in?
Yeah, so it costs them during a shutdown 3 to 4 crores per day to be shut down.
Okay.
And if you can reduce that time frame from 1 month to 2 days, it is significant, right?
Okay, I'd also want to know, that's the oil and gas industry, but you were telling me that you could do anything critical. That's an example that I really want to hear. Critical components, critical medicine.
So this is where we talk about deliveries. Now, drone delivery is something that is exciting. It is something that will be the future. today, if you ask companies, there's a lot of buzz about last mile delivery, about delivering pizzas to your doorsteps, about
You read
delivering
my mind.
medicines,
But
so
that's
on and
not
so
reality.
forth. That is not reality. That is for lack of a better, that is a pipe dream. For the simple reason that technology, the infrastructure, and the economic need does not exist for that.
Okay.
If you take the Indian landscape, right? Let's forget about the US, Europe, where people talk, but Europe, US are dead markets, if you ask me. The current markets are Asia is where the growth is. You look at India, you look at China, you look at the Philippines, Indonesia. This is where the next growth story is, right? It is not in the West anymore. The West is done.
Why would you say? They've already used drones commercially.
One, they have population declines.
Okay.
Except for the US, which has a growth, but that's more from immigration than local thing. The infrastructure is very set. Their processes are very set. In the US, drones can offset labor costs because labor is very expensive. So there is some efficiency there. For example, Amazon does deliveries in the US,
Yes.
but they have to have an observer every half mile. So if a drone is traveling 20 miles, you have to have 40 people observing the drone
Got
while
it.
it's flying. There is no efficiency in that.
Right.
Right? The efficiency comes if drone actually replaces and brings efficiency to the current infrastructure, right? If you're adding more humans to watch the drone, you might as well use a truck.
Yeah, absolutely.
Right?
Because it's the same cost.
Exactly,
Okay.
yeah.
What is that what are critical components to you from an Indian perspective? And there's something that you've used. It's called the mid-mile delivery. I've covered retail for 20 years. Always did the hub and spoke last mile. But Scandron is playing in the mid-mile place, right? Mid-mile delivery space. What do you mean by that? And also answer the critical component space for India. What do you mean by that?
So mid-mile is something in our definition of mid-mile is basically, okay, today we'll go back to Amazon, okay, or you take any of the big Walmarts, so on and so forth. So they usually have a hub just outside of the city, and then you have fulfillment or last mile delivery centers. Like you'll have one in Whitefield, let's say you'll have another in Indiranagar, you'll have another in JP Nagar, so to speak, and you have to have components come from your larger warehouses to these smaller distribution points, right? So the traffic jam starts once you come into the city. Outside it's not so bad, right? This is where it becomes critical. For example, coming from Whitefield to here, it's a distance of 21 kilometers. It took me 1 hour 45 minutes by road.
Yeah. I'm sorry for that, but yeah,
that's fine.
You're right.
So a drone would cover this distance in 15 minutes. Plus it would be point to point, right?
That's
and
really fast.
It is. And
So
that
the
is
truck will take you 2 hours. And this could take
15 minutes because the distance is also shorter. It's only about 10 kilometers.
Okay.
Right? And that is where the drone brings in efficiency. So for example, so if you're in Whitefield now, let's say, right? And you have these Amazon guys ready to deliver. So from your warehouse, you can come to your last mile fulfillment center. So the takeoff point, the landing point, both the locations are in your control.
Yeah.
There's no third party involved. And you can carry, let's say, about 20 kgs of parcels. And then these guys on bikes or whatever it is go out and deliver it. And so one thing people will say is, but it's only 20 kilos, right? A truck will carry 2 tons. But a lot of the time that truck is not full. Neither is it carrying everything in one shot. Here the drones can do multiple flights, right? In an hour you can do 6 flights.
Absolutely. That's 15 minutes. You
Correct.
Can
So
do.
every 15 minutes if you do a turnaround and you have 2 drones crisscrossing,
Yes.
there's no pollution, it's faster, turnaround times are higher, and you can actually get material out faster because you don't have to wait for the truck to fill up.
Okay, and for this to happen, things have already started. This is where you think it'll make money, and therefore you're a drone-led logistics service, right? Where people lease the drone from you, and that's how it works, right?
So we have several models.
Okay.
Sorry to interrupt you. We have several models that we work on. So the initial point is, okay, you have to prove that the drone service model works, right? It is important to prove that. Like when you have a new airliner, before airlines buy it, the manufacturer has to prove how the airline will make money from it.
Yes.
It's the same way. So it's not good enough for me to come to you and say, hey, buy this drone. It costs so much. It has so many features. I have to tell you how to use it. Now, when I tell you how to use it, it's not how to use 1 drone or 2 drones. I have to tell you how to use 50 of them, right? How to manage them, what the infrastructure required is, how do you charge the batteries, how long do the batteries last, how do you maintain that whole ecosystem, how do you load the packages, right? It's an aircraft in the end. You can't just put heavy stuff on one end, light stuff on the other. How do you balance that? How do you load and unload? what are the best practices. So this entire thing, there is a cost to it. Just like with your vehicles, you have a service schedule, right? It's the same thing with drones. So
point.
this is something you have to teach the customer. You have to teach the industry.
You read my mind there. The logistics managers of the day. I mean, here you see a combination of CTOs, CIOs,
Correct.
and the logistics guys have to sit on the same table, correct?
Correct.
Is that how it works typically?
So typically, yes, you will have to teach them, but it's actually important to go down to the lower levels to the people who will actually do the work.
In a sense, the loading of the
The loading, the unloading, it's a truck, right? So you have people, you
Yeah.
teach how to load and unload trucks.
Yeah.
You have to teach people how to do this. You have to teach people how to change the batteries. So you have to teach the entire ecosystem. Plus with this, you have to have, alternate landing points. Suppose there is a failure, one motor fails. You have to have a predetermined landing point. We also have rapid response teams. So if something goes down, we actually have teams in various areas who will respond rapidly. So the minute they realize there is an incident, they will actually respond and reach that area quickly.
Okay.
To ensure, there's minimum
For the
disruption.
benefit of the audience watching this, say a logistics guy is watching this and he wants to say, boss, I understand trucks. I understand sub 1 ton. I understand the 5 ton to 15 ton to 50 ton. How does this work? How should I gear myself? Just a quick answer so that they understand the economics, the dynamics.
So to people who are used to trucks, let's say when you have a new truck come out in the market and you weigh the cost benefits of it, it's the same way with drones. You do a cost benefit analysis, see where we actually bring a cost efficiency and a systemic efficiency for you, and that's the gap we fill.
Okay, it's great. In the end, it's about time of delivery. It's about, it's about operating the drones, the cost, and that's the major component, right? And there's no people.
Correct.
not
I
much
mean,
people there.
if you cannot make money with it, there is no point doing it. You can't have technology for the sake of technology,
Yes.
right? In the end, we are a business. Our customers have a business to run. So we have to teach them how to make money with this.
And you're disrupting the mid-mile. Define the mid-mile today in India. Where does it stand? And how will you've already answered how the drones work. How would the mid-mile get disrupted? Because the retailers have been talking last mile always. This concept of the mid-mile, was it always there? Or is it a concept that's emerged after drones?
I think it's a concept that is going to get defined now.
Okay.
It is not yet defined.
Okay.
It is something that we use to explain to our customers because the last mile is kind of misused also in a lot of ways.
Yes.
Last mile can mean to the retail shop.
Kiranas.
Last mile can also mean from the kirana shop to the house.
Yes.
Right. So there are two last miles. So when we say mid mile, what we mean is from a major warehouse at the edge of the city
Or a
to
fulfillment
smaller warehouses
Yes.
within the city. That is what we call as the mid mile.
I got it. Say, for example, we're talking Bangalore here, folks, so bear with us. So you're in Whitefield, for example. Say a fulfillment center is, say, in a Kolar or a Hoskote.
Hoskote, there is Amazon's
Yes,
big fulfillment
correct.
center there.
From there to...
From there to the
Whitefield.
ITPL Whitefield office.
That is
right?
possible.
And so you have a lot of stuff that is same day
That's
delivery.
about 20 kilometers.
Yeah, and you have a lot of stuff that is same day delivery, right?
Yes.
So imagine them having to wait for a truck to fill up, or here every hour they could just schedule a 20-kilo flight and it would just come and go back, come and go back.
Okay. Typical conversations with all these logistics guys when you sit down. I know you're a year old in this operation, but you've been doing drones from 2006. We'll get into that later. What is a typical conversation like? A guy sits on the table like what we're doing now. What does he ask you? The cost is the only thing that they talk about, because once I raised this point that drones could be high cost, could be great service, but there is cost X, but if there's a benefit, you can still compensate the drone company
Correct.
Y. Right, that's a mod. But people say cheaper doesn't mean better, kind of a thing, right? What are your thought processes when you sit with these guys? What are the typical questions that they ask you?
So it's actually the other way. They don't ask us questions. We tend to ask them, what are your pain
It's
points?
discovery today.
Yeah, so let's say we ask them, okay, yeah, I do drones, but before, and typically when I say I do drones, first thing everybody will ask me is, how long does the battery last? That's a common question, right? So that is actually irrelevant for a logistic drone, because it's how far do you fly and how much can you carry is the discussion, right?
Yeah.
And so typically we'll ask them, okay, what is your pain point, right? So one of the big pain points is intercity, okay? So we're not there yet. Give us a couple of years, we'll get there.
Okay.
So today, this is the segment we're focusing on. And then typically it would be like, okay, so what if we could deliver 20 kilos to you at so-and-so cost? And so there is two. There is a asset cost and there is a operating cost, right? And you have same-day fulfillment. You have smaller packages that need to go. So one of the other advantages that come from this, right? So in Whitefield, instead of having one fulfillment center, you can have two. So let's say you have one in ITPL, and then you can have another one towards Varthur side. So drone can actually go to 2 different areas, which again by road can be anywhere from 10 minutes to 45 minutes.
Correct. That's the sell to them.
You're going almost exactly, right?
They don't bother about the technologies, the software integration, how good that is.
So we tell them not to worry about it.
Yeah, it's
for the
important,
simple
yeah,
reason,
correct. Doesn't really
you have a
matter.
truck.
Yeah.
This
You
is
do
a
worry
drone.
about
It's
the
just
transmission.
so I use a motorcycle, you use a car, you use a truck, and you use a drone.
Yeah, it's
We
the
are
same
just
logic.
another tool for them,
Okay.
and a tool that fits certain segments well. It doesn't fit all of them.
Okay. That means you're taking on. I mean, the other model that I think about is tomorrow a fleet operator can come to you and say, Scandron, Arjun, I want to work with you. Lease me a few drones. That's possible too.
Once we get to the size, probably yes.
Okay, what's the size then? You talked about size. What's the total addressable market in India? And I'm sure you're looking at all these clusters, right, where you can play. It could be retail, it could be automobile. You also gave an healthcare example, but what would work for you? What's the addressable market for you today?
So with the size of drones that we have, I would say for us to directly service, we can probably service maybe 400 to 500 cities in India. Where we can probably make money in the model we have right now. And then as the market grows and the market matures and the market learns how to use this and then make them use it directly. So we would go from leasing and service provider to becoming a more pure manufacturer. So that is the goal.
At the moment, how are the drones? You build it yourself?
We
obviously.
design, develop, manufacture the drones,
Yes.
and we operate them.
Okay, and they're very different from the other drones out there where
Yes.
there's the standard.
Yes.
This is completely customized to client.
So it is not customized to client. It's customized to a specific purpose. So when we started making logistics drones, we took away all the fluff and we started from the ground up.
What do you mean by the fluff?
So, for example, we took away the bells and whistles. It doesn't necessarily have to look really pretty. It's a truck of drones, right? It's like a truck. So, truck doesn't necessarily look pretty, but it looks solid. It's sturdy. It's very industrious to get the job done. So, that is how drones are designed. They're designed to be very sturdy. They're designed to be easy to operate, easy to fix, easy to repair. They're very modular, and they're designed to offer, let's say, a lot of uptime. So they don't spend so much time on the ground getting repaired, but you just kind of land, change the batteries, put the package, and go up again. And do this again and again and again and again and again reliably.
Talk about the design process. These are frames that are designed by your team, or is this standard?
No. We design the
It's
the
like
entire
designing a
frame,
truck.
every single
we
component.
Keep going by truck. It's
We
completely-
design every single component.
Okay, great. That's good to know.
So where, for example, you have fasteners and stuff like that we use off the market, some communication systems, autopilots we use on the market because companies have already spent billions of dollars developing that, right? There's no point reinventing the wheel. So in that we choose the best ones. And when I say best, I don't mean the cheapest or the most expensive, but the one that are most appropriate for what we are doing.
Okay, you
And then
don't
we
do
work
this
with that.
basis clients, right? You don't sit with the client and say, hey, we have you have four sets of drones today. How many sets?
We have 5 different scales
Five
of
different
logistics
scales.
drones.
Okay, and different skill sets, right? They get a payload based on payload.
Different payloads, different operating altitudes also.
Okay.
For example, for the defense, India is a very unique defense battlefield where our fighting starts at 12,000 feet and
Yes.
above. We're the only country in the world that has that.
Okay.
So the army has unique logistical
On all
requirements.
borders, is it? 12,000 feet and above?
Yeah, the entire northern border,
northern
basically.
border,
Except for Pakistan where you have a
Yeah.
little bit of a desert.
Correct.
The rest is all high altitude.
Absolutely.
And so you have companies in the Netherlands, you'll say we carry 200 kilos. Sure, but you carry 200 kilos at sea level for 8 minutes. So they are basically designed to pick up something and put it on top of a building. That's it. They are not logistics drones. So high-end logistics drones, high-altitude logistics drones is a very Indian concept. So we have actually designed drones that are specific for the defense needs.
Okay.
They operate very well at high altitudes. They don't operate so well at low altitudes. They're designed to work in the thin atmosphere and they're designed to serve a very, very specific purpose for the army.
It's interesting. So when you come back to a client and you give them these 5 packages, obviously the commercial guys will take the commercial package. Do they then say that customize it from here or there? Or would you say, no, this is a standard set, but we'll tell you how to operate it?
So we can customize to a certain extent. For example, our larger drone, one of the drones called the Cargo Max 2000, it can carry 25 kilos. So you can actually add more batteries and carry 10 kilos, but for a longer distance.
Okay.
Right? Or you can say, okay, I only need to go 5 kilos, so you can carry 40 kgs. Right? So you can scale it out in that term without making any changes to the drone.
Okay, this is interesting. So we talked about you take care of the design process, and obviously you talked about the different business models out there. For me, the most important aspect is now, regulations. I want to get deeper into it. But when you deliver into the mid-mile, right, there's some extended portion of the city that you enter in. You're allowed to operate?
So the good thing is the current government regulations are very, very user-friendly. They also make sense. So what they've done is, except for certain areas which are defined as orange and red zones, the green zone is mostly the whole country and you can actually fly. Now in that they have said, very rightly so, they have put restrictions on how high you can fly and what distances you can travel, which makes sense for the simple reason there are a lot of companies building drones. Not all of them know how to do this. So if you make, if you're a truck and you break down, or a car or a scooter on the road, you kind of stop there. With a drone, if something goes wrong, you fall.
Because these are heavy things.
Correct. Not only heavy, you fall, right? Because you basically need to be in the air. And when you fall from the air, there is potential to damage something on the ground. So it's important to ensure that they are flight worthy. So the government has a type certification process in place. They actually have coordinate allowing you for beyond visual line of sight. BVLOS is a term you hear often, which stands for beyond visual line of sight. Simplistically, it means you can fly the drone as far as you can see, not beyond that. Okay. So BVLOS actually allows you to fly beyond the range that you can see. So they have processes put into place which are starting to allow us to do that. We take permission each time and do it.
And these are autonomous drones, right?
Autonomous drones. Okay. So we have a safety pilot. So by default, people don't have enough faith in drones. Typically, we think if the drone is 20 kilometers away, what is the pilot actually going to do?
Yeah. But would the client come back and say, I want it operated by pilots? Would they do that?
We would say no.
That's not your model?
No. For the simple reason, in an aircraft, a pilot is sitting inside the aircraft, right? He knows where left is left, right is left, up is up. He has the same perspective as the aircraft. In a drone, if you're flying long ranges, the pilot is 20 kilometers away from a drone. Yeah. What is he going to do? Right? Yeah. If you lose communication, you lost communication.
And that's a liability.
Correct. So we build fail-safe and reliability into the drone. So the drone has certain decisions it makes on its own. Number one is safety. Always safety. If it feels it's an unsafe environment, if wind conditions exceed a certain amount, if it feels the batteries for some reason are being consumed faster than they should, it will actually abort and come back.
Got it. And why 5 drones? What are those 5 verticals?
Different sizes, different payloads.
Yeah, you said defense is one vertical.
Defense has several requirements. Okay. For example, they need drones that take out 4,000 meters, climb to 5,000 meters, and deliver 20 kgs. Then there is another set that take over 3,000, climb to 4,000 and deliver
That's your second
payloads.
Range.
Second range. Then we have really small ones, which will carry about 2 kgs. This was made actually for a customer requirement. We'll carry it for like 3-4 kilometers and back, just 2 kgs. And then the other ones are basically in 2 different categories. So one will carry heavy payloads for a short distance, and another one will carry about 5 kgs for a very long range.
Okay. And consciously you designed all this?
We consciously designed, in our mind, as we studied the industry, found out what kind of customers wanted. From our assessment of where we could fulfill a need, we have these ranges. And then as we start going into the market with this, we'll find more gaps. Okay. So we'll either adjust some of these to do or we'll make new products.
Okay, so you're going after everybody. The addressable market is huge for you then.
So my addressable market is anybody who needs a mid-mile delivery from point A to point B, which is fixed and doesn't change.
And can use multiple drones within 20 kgs.
Correct. Okay. 20 kgs, 40 kgs. We have different, right, depending on the distances. So the idea is it's a repeatable process and you do it several times a day.
Okay.
That is the market that I'm hitting. Now, whether you're a logistics company or whether you're a supermarket or you're a pharmacy company,
you don't
it doesn't really matter to me.
And I'm so glad you didn't give numbers because you really don't know.
Don't know. The honest market is the potential is huge. The infrastructure has to come up. As we said, we have drone pods to manufacture. We have processes to put into place. The rapid response teams have to be put into place. Then, of course, the biggest kahuna of them all is a lot of drone companies start doing this together. How do you coordinate that traffic?
Great.
We are all flying at 120 meters as mandated by GGCA. So we have to establish, separation corridors, direction. Plus, somebody has to know at all times where all these drones are. And that is coming into place. We have tied up with a UTM supplier for this. We feel the model they have is probably going to be the best one to use, at least currently.
What's a UTM?
Unified Traffic Management.
Oh, they're doing this? They can manage multiple companies.
So there are companies. Honeywell has a system. Thales has a system. So Honeywell, Thales, these kind of companies.
Yeah, the regular names.
They have, So they have transponders and you can only view them on their sites. So
Got it.
you can do any Honeywell drone, but the Honeywell Thales can view those. So the current company that we have joined hands with, they actually allow any drone to be detected in their system through a very simple process, and I think that is the way.
So there's nothing going in.
It's not manufacturer specific.
So basically, it doesn't go hit other drones or something. That's just
It's not hit. It's more tracking.
Yes.
It's not avoidance. It's tracking, right?
But
So
will
when
there
you
be
take
avoidance?
permission,
You need to take avoidance also, right? At some point.
there is collision avoidance is already there, built into drones, but it's not that. For example, commercial aircraft, even today, not all commercial aircraft have avoidance, right?
Yeah.
Where if you proximity, then one will go up, one will go down. Even commercial aircraft don't. It's expensive. So every piece of technology you add to it becomes more expensive.
Got it. Arjun, we briefly spoke about the government and the policies. I have to get into the subject and its history because you've been associated with drones from 2006.
Correct.
How's the policy evolved? I mean, in 2006, but I've never heard of drones in India. I would say science fiction movies, Robocop kind of movies, you'd see drones flying around and you're a fan. But then things have changed since. I think more so after 14. And the policy also put a stop to many of the operators in between.
Correct.
And then it opened it up, very beautifully defined. You want to talk about that history for the benefit of our younger audience who want to build on drones and why they have to be cognizant of policy?
Okay. So when I started doing drones, there was no drone policy because drones didn't exist.
In 6, right? You came back to India at that point of time.
Yeah, I came back a couple of years earlier and started drones. And there were just, I think, total of myself and there were 2 other companies who actually were doing something with drones. And it was purely defense oriented, right? Drones were for surveillance for the defense market. And that time, India was predominantly dependent on drones from Israel. To a large extent still are, now going out a little more.
But defense related?
Defense related, and they were the only ones who could afford,
so
right?
Just be CBUs, come here, build them up, and then get them to fly and do...
No, so the Israelis built the drones and sent them here. So we actually designed, developed, manufactured here.
It was completely built here?
Yes, yes. Built by the Israelis. So when we started, there was no ecosystem, right? So we had to build all our parts, and drones cost like $100,000, $150,000 a pop back then, because you designed everything from scratch. The components were expensive. They were designed for the military. So things designed for the military tend to have a lot of stuff put into them for the military. They're hardened. They have, a lot of fail-safes.
So it's only military application?
At that point, yes.
Okay. And there was no rules from the government?
No rules. So we actually used to coordinate with the ATC directly when we wanted to fly.
And this is a hobby for you then, or was it commercial?
No, it was commercial. The idea was to make money. When I started I was a hobby flyer for a long time, and then when I started drones, it was with a very, very specific purpose that drones will make money. Okay. It wasn't just to make the technology for the sake of technology.
So you had to directly talk to the ATC at that point of time?
Yeah, so we would take permission, we would tell them which areas we were in, and then they would, issue a NOTAM so that, no other aircraft would enter that area.
What's a NOTAM for that?
Notice to Airmen.
Notice to Airmen.
So they actually published for the commercial pilots, so on and so forth, and then we would fly.
And same type of operations, was it commercial at that point of time, or was it more GIS kind of thing at that
No GIS. This was purely for the defense. We manufactured for the defense, and when we flew under the defense umbrella, there was no problem, right? So they covered the airspace, everything. So we had drones all the way from hand-launched drones, all the way to large drones that flew for 12 hours, flew at an altitude of 14,000 feet, had ranges of 200 kilometers giving live videos.
It was all fine then? It's all safe?
All fine. There was no problem.
So there were no rules,
no rules. Or under the umbrella of the defense, right?
Okay. I remember specifically in 2012-13, suddenly this whole narrative of funding drones in India, because equity money started coming in. You have to realize the startup ecosystem started growing at that point in time. And then I still remember I was in a magazine at the time, and I would write about drone companies. And these were like hobby flying companies who would talk about getting into the commercial operations. What frightened me at the time is it was not their own design. It was somebody else's design, and they had no software hardware integration capabilities.
Correct.
It was just a terrible play at this point of time, but it was good branding for them. They went and said, what happened in 2012? Suddenly, the government got a little scared also. There's so many of these drone companies raising money, right? That sent some alarm bells also. So did the policy evolve from there, or was it earlier?
So, no, the policy came about with the advent of DJI drones. I will actually name one specific company. It's a Chinese company. They dominate 70% of the commercial consumer drone market worldwide.
Okay.
Their drones are inexpensive. They're very reliable. They're very easy to fly. They're very good for commercial hobby grade. And now they make some industrial drones also.
Okay.
They're very good for what they are. I mean, you can fly a DJI drone many kilometers away and bring it back. It will continue doing the same thing very effectively, very efficiently. Just because of the numbers they have made, they have got that dependably into those drones. Two things happened which actually created the drone explosion. One was drones became inexpensive comparatively. You came below $2,000 the cost per drone. Second, computing power evolved suddenly.
Yes.
So you've heard of NVIDIA, right? They make these graphic chips, right? So there is in GIS there is a process called photogrammetry. So the computing architecture required for photogrammetry is ideal for graphics chips made by NVIDIA or other companies that make graphics chips. So suddenly you had this software made by 2-3 companies, Pix4D, Agisoft, and all who were the early runners in this, and they were able to take 2D images, overlap 2D images, and create stereoscopic images from them and extrapolate data. Which is how the whole GIS revolution started, right? Okay. So suddenly, the photographs that drone took, besides the wedding, had a commercial value. Now you could take out geographic data from that.
That's very interesting. So that's how it began.
So it is the advent of these technologies. Compute power, the software, photogrammetry, and the cost of the drone going down.
The cost of the drone, yes. And the funding, would that be the fourth element?
No, funding didn't play a part. There's money. There's always been lots of money. There's no shortage of money.
Okay.
What do you do with it? Right? So the minute you can buy a $2,000 drone for an individual to do GIS, you don't need funding anymore. A lot of people can afford 2-3 lakhs to put into a drone, and you have the software which is a subscription, and you find customers and you do offer GIS services. That's how it began. Wedding photography, suddenly it became all the rage, right? Drone photography at your wedding, event photography. So that is where it became, and it came to the point you started having drones flying near sensitive defense areas, airports, right? Take a drone picture of an aeroplane landing, this becomes an issue. And this is where suddenly the government realized that this is unorganized and it is going to become a problem. And that is where they clamped down. So the initial...
that really a problem? Sensitive area flying?
Yes, very definitely, very definitely. Plus, people become irresponsible, right? So it's like you have two-wheelers, which most people use very well to commute back and forth to work of pleasure. And then you have people who do wheelies in the middle of traffic.
I've seen that.
Right? There's always somebody to misuse it and spoil the party for everybody else.
And that was like a very crazy... It was like a dark... there's a dark era for the drone ecosystem. So
I think, yes, pausing it was correct. Maybe...
was it correct? You say good, they stopped it.
Yes, they needed to bring in regulation.
But they took a good 18 months, right? 18 months to 2 years?
Yes, I think... see, there is no perfect way to do this. They chose a way to do it, which is, I think, fine. There were certain steps being taken at that time, which were, I think... too future thinking, because you don't have any homogenization or standardization of technology to be able to use centralized services currently. And then I think, there was some rationalization came into it, and they said, okay, we need this industry to grow. Otherwise, somebody else is going to grow outside and it's a problem. So for the Indian industry to grow, they had to open it up. Right. So that's when they said, okay, we'll restrict a few areas. In the rest, as long as you follow these rules and steps, you can do it. Which is a very, very good first step.
Okay. That was around 14, 15 kind of time frame?
17, 18 is where it became more. And then the last couple of years, it became even more liberal.
Yeah.
Where they said, okay, now type certify the drones, right? So they came up with processes to ensure drones are safe, drones are manufactured correctly, and then introduce them into common service, which is the right approach. In the end, it is a flying object. Yes. You will fly over populated areas, and you have to keep safety in mind.
So so the policy has been progressive.
It is very progressive. It will take time. It's a new industry, right? You have to know what to regulate also. Right? Even that is an evolving thing.
Now this whole Make in India concept is used. You yourself harbor dreams of becoming a large manufacturer. When you talk about Make in India, I look at 2-3 components. One is the battery. Yeah, I don't know what kV battery would the drone be operating on, for example.
So, let's say battery is more than the voltage. You talk about the battery technology, right? So you had lithium polymer, you have lithium ion.
The chemistry.
Correct, the chemistry of the battery. And then you have solid state, which is similar to lithium polymer, but it's more energy dense. And now you have graphene batteries. The most energy dense fuel that you have today is petrol. Any gasoline engine offers a lot more energy density compared to any battery. So it's actually more efficient to have drones with engines. The problem is they're more dangerous. They tend to be bigger, they tend to be heavier, they tend to have more failure rates, plus you have petrol floating around. If it falls, there's a chance of an explosion. And they're very noisy.
Yeah.
So when you're flying low over populated areas, that is not a good thing.
They make a lot of noise.
Yeah,
like
it's an engine, right? It's an engine. It's like an engine, right? Okay. But with propellers. You've seen a turboprop?
Yes, I've seen a turboprop.
So that's how noisy it is. Electric motors are very quiet. They're much safer comparatively, more reliable to a large extent. So
we have that ecosystem. My question was that
India does not.
So that's what I'm saying.
So, for example, we design, develop, manufacture everything on our own.
An IP,
we can do the entire frame ourselves. We can do a lot of the electronics ourselves. There are some sensors which you have to buy from outside because there are companies who have spent decades developing those sensors. You can't develop them on your own. Autopilot systems, I think ISE has come up with a new homegrown autopilot. So the problem with anything new, right now you're trying to get to dependability. How do you make something dependable? You have to use it and modify it for a long period of time. That's when dependability comes in, right?
For a short five-year frame, Arjun, I mean, what would be the most relevant ecosystem that you want to be developed quickly?
I think batteries would be one main thing. Autopilots will take time for the simple reason we'll have to take them, put them into our drones and fly them. You fly them for hundreds of thousands of hours before you start getting reliability, right? That it has to start, and we have started that. But it will take time to come to the point where you can replace imported material with that.
It's interesting. I want to raise this. In '83, when the Suzuki of the world and the Maruti Suzuki thing happened, they built the ecosystem ground up, and now we have an automobile cluster.
So drones will do that.
To get there, but that's a longer time frame, right? It took India about 3 decades to do the automobile cluster. I think the halcyon days of Indian automotive were 2013 when everything was peak Madras, in the Madras ecosystem or the Chennai ecosystem. You have it going all the way up till Coimbatore. Then you have the Pune ecosystem of the Pune belt. Then you have the Manasar and the Gujarat belt now, right?
Correct.
Right? So how will that happen with drones? Will it take longer? My question is that.
Too soon to say, for the simple reason, so you will not have 300 drone companies. When all is said and left, you'll have some service providers, a whole bunch of them, who will do the service providing. And as with anything else, there will be 7 or 8 large drone companies standing because you will need that volume to sustain. You will need that.
Consolidate.
Not consolidate. They will die off. Unless you have something original offer to in the ecosystem. And money is not the original thing to offer. Money is there, right? Funding is there to build your own stuff. It is the ideas. It's how you implement.
Got it.
Most drone technology is there. What do you do with it? How do you use it? What technologies do you develop on your own?
Where do you want to play upstream, downstream in the ecosystem? I look at upstream as the basic manufacturing space, downstream services, or do you want to, how do you want to look?
We will go downstream to a certain extent, unless we find... we are hoping that we will reach the volumes where it will start justifying us to have a lot of components being manufactured by us. For example, motors eventually. So this is the issue in India, right? Nobody wants to take a bet unless it's a sure thing. Right?
How do you know it's a sure thing till you experience
Exactly.
it, right?
So, you have larger companies. There is no pure research happening in India. Like if you want to become an electric motor company, right? Get deep pockets, build 200 different types of motors, build 100 of each motors and run them and run them and run them and run them. And the reliability factor, which is the normal stretches in years, you'll get in months.
All right.
But you have to be willing to be able to do that. You say, okay, drone is going to be the next ecosystem, right? Let's say these are the 5 common motors that they'll probably use. Let's build them. Let's build 100 of them, 1,000 of them,
So
and let's use them.
Who's going to build this cat? I mean, you say money is not the problem. There's private equity money, there's VC money, there's obviously banks also. But who's going to build the cat?
Somebody who has to really like electric motors and says, okay, I'm going to make motors, I'm going to make them for
the
this.
big boys themselves.
Not only big, can be smaller companies. You don't need to be that big to
So
do
you can
it.
be a small SMB doing automotive.
You just have to be ready not to make money for the next 2 years.
Okay.
You have to say, I'm going to take 2 years to build this product, then I will go to the market and make money.
So that's how the local ecosystem will be built.
That is how it will be built. You'll have a few players who will take these bets, and their bets will pay off.
And would you say that the Commerce Ministry or the Trade Ministry should be cognizant of this ecosystem?
They should be cognizant. And I think, for example, in the US, right, a lot of companies that are funded by the government, or they give them funds to do research. And that needs to start happening in India. I think, one of the bottlenecks for us is testing labs.
Yeah.
right? There is a big bottleneck. For example, my larger drone, there is only one lab in the country that can take my large drone.
Where's this lab?
It's based in Bangalore.
Oh, is it?
That's it.
And the
And
DRDO.
all the small ones can go different places, yeah. So they're the only ones where my drone will fit. So these are some of the bottlenecks you face.
But you're saying that the ecosystem is getting there, or is it just started? Are we doing babies?
Oh,
there?
it's not even started.
Oh man.
It will start. And Make in India is good, but I think it has to come with a very pragmatic approach.
Yeah.
If you stop all imports, for example, what they did with the laptops,
Yes.
kind of makes sense. We have the ecosystem to support it domestically. There is no reason for us to, companies may have efficiencies abroad, which they want to continue
Yeah, they
using,
can come and do it.
but they can do it here. Like Apple has taken the plunge, other bigger companies have
Foxconn
taken the
has,
plunge,
yeah.
Foxconn. So that will happen. But drone, because it's something new, right? So, for example, what do you do? Are you going to build agricultural drones? Are you going to
GIS drones.
GIS drones? Are you going to do surveillance? Or are you going to do logistics? What are you going to do? So, a drone is a platform in the end. What do you utilize that platform for? Do you use it for inspections and services? Do you use it for agricultural spraying? Do you use it for logistics? First, you as an entrepreneur or a person starting a drone company have to be very clear in your mind what you're going to do with it.
So that's why you have clarity. You've already signed up a couple of clients, and you can give us one example without naming the client.
So
I know who they are. You've told me, so let me know.
in the logistics sector, as I said, logistics drones initially will start with a very niche segment. We can solve a very particular problem, and we are, I would say, lucky enough, and the timing was good that we met and we have a synergy. And we have a logistic setup. We'll be deploying across hundreds of cities across India to solve one specific problem where the drones are going to solve it more effectively than the current method of doing it.
Okay, and I think you should do something called the mid-mile kind of campaign. It is true. People have to
Yes,
understand that.
yes.
And I'm glad you're going to disrupt that. My point is, founders, leadership. You spoke so much about the ecosystem and the government. Does much of your time go away in talking to these people?
Some of it, not as much as you would think, because the processes are there. That is a very good thing. And they have appointed external agencies to guide you through the steps. For example, type certification.
Okay.
There are agencies that have been appointed through a due diligence process by the government.
It is
It is very
transparent.
transparent process.
Okay.
It is a very involved process,
Okay.
but it is a very set process. Right? So from that standpoint, so if you have
It's
a
got
set
to be
process,
open also.
it's
Yeah.
open. So you can go through it. And that's a good thing. And
It's great. And do your co-founders handle this, or the government side? I know you handle the design, the sales.
so yes, they tend to take a lot of that load off. Unless it becomes very technical, they will handle a lot of that.
How important is it to have co-founders? How many of them in your company?
We are 4 of us total who started this, let's say they were customers of mine who actually became partners with me in this business. So that is how we took off.
Would you say you got lucky at the time to do this vision of yours? I mean, it will be eating in your brain for a long time, and you suddenly have these partners who say, "We'll help you with this." Was that a good thing to happen? Otherwise, you'd just been a services company, right? You wouldn't have been a logistics services company.
Yes. So they were actually customers, right? So we actually shared a cab ride back from a customer site in Chennai back to the airport.
And you started the
that
conversation,
1 hour,
did they?
so that 1 hour, they were there to meet the same customers I was, and we shared that cab ride.
And you started pitching to them? Or?
No, so we just had a general conversation. They saw what I was doing. I kind of understood what they were doing. And then they said, okay, they would be my customers too for certain work. And then the synergy just built from there. And suddenly we said, okay, we have a major investor who backs, and we can do this in a larger way.
Okay.
And that is how the idea came about.
Okay.
And initially we started operating as a division of our parent company, Magellanic Cloud.
Yeah.
And
You told me that,
then we decided that, it would be better to have startup status. We can be more independent. Because our trajectory is very different from the rest of the parent company.
Okay, got it. And so that gives you a cushion also, because
Yes.
they're upfronting the cash, and you
Correct.
got to go
Correct.
the business. That's wonderful. Your thoughts on where? I mean, do you want to raise money? Because most of them in our ecosystem, to the young ones, and I feel terrible that you have to talk about raising money. Do you want to raise money, self-funded? How do you want to build this company?
I think to a large extent we'll remain self-funded. We don't need to go to an IPO. So, for example, a lot of tech companies do IPOs,
Yeah, we saw a
but
drone
most of
company go
that
IPO
is to subsidize their operations,
Yes.
which is not a good business model because it's not sustainable, right? You can't keep raising money to pay your bills.
Okay.
If you're raising money, it should go towards R&D, towards setting up new infrastructure, towards setting up new assets, which you can build on, right? Which can actually contribute to the revenue.
So you're not. So you're saying that okay, it's early days to talk about all this, but IPO is something that's not possible. We saw one drone company that went IPO. IPO en route is basically the startup flavor of the month today. Everyone talks about IPO. Is that a good route to raise money?
Depends. So a
Depends on
lot
the
of
time
companies,
spent and
depends
money.
what you want the money for. There's two reasons to go to an IPO. One is the early investors want an exit.
Yeah.
So that is one way for them to exit. Second, it is for you to raise funds.
You don't have any of those problems.
No. So, I mean, from an IPO, how much of the fund actually goes into the company? So that is another metric you have to look at, right? So, fine, I'll give you $30 million. What are you going to do with it? That is a question that unless you have a very clear answer on what you need to do with that money and how you will utilize that money to make more money, there's no point.
So your sales are good, and you're
Yes, we're getting there.
You're getting there. That's a great answer. So the typical sales cycle is long, like any industry here.
The sales cycle is yet to be defined. It's a new industry.
You have to educate them.
We have to educate the customer. So that is why, people can buy drones. They don't know how to operate them. As I said, buying one drone and operating one drone is different. Buying two is different. Owning and operating 50 is different.
Would you call yourself an operator? And the design.
We will design, develop, operate, and lease to the market. We will also operate for the market while we educate them on how to do it.
Okay, brilliant. What's the next 18 months look like for Scandron? 18 months, 2 years?
Right now, basically maturing all the products that we currently have, getting them into the market, establishing them, and we will learn a lot. As we start flying hundreds of these drones across various places, we will learn a lot about the difficulties in the operations. We'll learn where we can do better and develop, and then of course starting to build larger drones.
And your order book needs to grow, obviously. Your focus will be to increase.
Orders wise, we are okay, for the next few years.
And you can deliver.
We should be good. Yes, we can deliver also. As I said, it is focused on developing the ancillary technologies to operate these drones is where our focus in the next 18 months is. We have the drones. Now it's the supporting, right? For example, the engine maintenance and all this. So when you build a new aircraft, you have to set up the infrastructure. Correct. That is what we are focused on. And at the same time, of course, we are getting into counter-drone technology.
So that's an experiment. How much of it is experimentation in Scandron? I mean, would it be 80%?
We have finished most of our R&D right now.
Yes, 80% of the current set of products, 20% experimentation, or do you say only 5% experimentation for future products?
So right now the experimentation is more on the counter drone. Our drones are kind of, we have done the R&D that is required. So now we are just kind of moving from prototypes to production prototypes to getting them to market, type certification, so on and so forth.
So the counter drone is the new one?
Counter drone is the new one that is coming out.
Counter to counter and insurgency?
So basically it's to track drones.
Okay. That's a counter.
And second point is to intercept them. And intercept in remote areas, you can actually bring them down. In populate areas, you actually need to capture them and remove them. So it's three different, right? You can't shoot down a drone over a populated area.
For the future, once there are a lot of drones flying in the sky.
They're already there.
So are they the real eye in the sky? Do they like the song?
Maybe to a large extent, yes. Drones have definitely revolutionized warfare and security. The bird's eye perspective that you get of everything is phenomenal.
Okay, interesting. Yeah. Okay, moving on. We've talked about business, we've talked about a lot of these things. We talked about fundraising, and you don't want to do it at this point in time. You're happy the way you are. Great, kudos to you, and I wish you all the power to become a larger business. What keeps you awake, in a sense? I want to do this because you told me that you were once a chef, but you almost became a fighter pilot. A
commercial pilot,
you still have a license, kind of a thing, or do you flew planes?
I flew, long time back. Yeah, I don't anymore. Yes, I used to be a chef.
You've done a man of many things, and you come from an army background. Also, your father was in the army. What keeps you awake in business? What keeps you saying that I need to do this? I mean, people do it for. We all do it for wealth, of course. But But you talk about it with such passion. Why do you do this?
I'm a huge. Sci-fi buff, aviation enthusiast, love anything to do with space and rockets and airplanes. I'm claustrophobic, so, the pilot thing wasn't an option, long term as a career. And I love working with my hands. So that's how the whole chef thing came about. It allowed me to do my creativity.
Yeah, you have a degree in culinary.
Yes, I do. I was also a network engineer after that with computer networks and a hobby fly. So at a particular point in my life, I saw some synergy in that. I saw other companies doing it. This is early 2000s, late 90s, where it was just kind of thing. That is how the whole drone concept came.
Okay. And you fell in love with it?
Yeah, it allowed me to pursue my passion, which is aviation, my hobby. Allowed me to work with my hands.
Do you still build? Do you still build hobby cars or these?
No. So I
RCs,
build drones.
RC drones?
Whenever my guys allow me, I'll go and interfere with them in the workshop.
Do you own any RC drones? Hobby drones?
I used to. Not so much anymore. Don't get the time.
Don't have the
but
time.
I used to love RC flying.
Okay.
Just don't get the time to do it now.
Okay. What about books? You are an avid reader, you told me.
Yes.
And how many books do you have again?
About 3,000.
Okay. And you read a book a week?
On an average, a book a week.
And is that important for a leader to do so?
I don't think it's important for a leader to read books.
Yeah.
I think it's important for a leader to have exposure.
To
Books are
different
one
things,
way to get
perspective.
exposure, to get different perspectives, to get more exposure, to learn more knowledge. Today, of course, there is not many different ways you can do that. But books just tend to be mine. I will read absolutely anything, whether it's a physics journal or a computer thing, to non-fiction. I love fiction, non-fiction, some of it.
Okay. I'm going to ask you a difficult question.
Sure.
What are you reading now? And what is your all-time favorite that inspired you to be what you are?
Books-wise, right now I'm reading a book by Michael Connelly, one of his detective series. And besides that, I'm reading, I just finished, I reread Robert Iger's book, which is, his The Ride of a Lifetime. So I follow Bill Gates' list, so he has some very good suggestions many times. And so few books that have influenced me, one is Ride of a Lifetime. Second was a book called Nuts.
Okay.
Which actually inspired me to do something different. So Nuts
called
is
Nuts,
Nuts. It's the story about Southwest Airlines in the US in the early 70s.
Yeah, Southwest is amazing.
Yeah. So the US, the airline industry was very regulated, right? You could either fly local routes or you could fly long distance routes. You couldn't do both. And Southwest, actually, the way they started, they had this whole different approach where they took away the bells and whistles. And Herb Keller, who was the founding CEO, right? He was asked, how are you competing with the other airlines? He said, I'm not. He said, I'm competing with the bus and the train.
That's a great narrative.
Yeah, absolutely. And that's what they do.
It's called Nuts, right?
Yeah.
I'm going to put that in the audio list.
Sure, I'll send you the thing. And, they asked him, how much profit do you make per flight? This was in the late 80s, early 90s. He was asked this question. He said, we make about $270 per
Something
flight.
of that sort, yeah?
$270 per flight is their profit. And they said, this huge aircraft that costs millions of dollars, all these people, you only make 270. He says, but I have 600,000 flights.
Routes.
600,000 actual flights.
You did?
And not aircraft, the routes that you fly,
Routes,
the routes.
yeah.
And every day, and that's where you make the money, 270 to 600,000.
I definitely would love to read that
So
book.
all your Indigos and Deccan, when they started, every low-cost airline, Ryan,
they
they
follow
all
So that's
model
the
themselves
playbook.
on. That is the playbook. Southwest is the playbook.
So no, you're a talking man of aviation. You understand it then
Yeah.
completely. Great. So movies, art, do you enjoy them as much?
Sci-fi movies.
Okay.
I enjoy collecting. I enjoy seeing art. If you ask me, Picasso, this, that, I couldn't tell you the nuances. I like to see things that are well
like it,
made,
you buy it.
that are look beautiful. I appreciate architecture.
Okay.
In terms of design and form, both. So it's the engineering, and so it's how to make engineering beautiful, right? You can make a bridge that looks ugly, or you can make it beautiful, right? So I believe function and form must go together.
Fantastic answers. And family. How important family to you?
Family is very important. It keeps you grounded. It's also a support system. And as you say, you have good days and bad days, and you need someone to go home to, right? So you have to have that. Plus, you do all this, and then you have to have someone to share it with.
And final question is, as a founder, co-founder, do many things. You have good days, bad days. How does one switch off? There's people, there's money, there is several stakeholders that you have to handle, and does it all weigh down? How do you take it off your shoulders?
So the honest answer is, I'm not a big fan of the term work-life balance.
Okay, yeah.
So there are people who do one thing and they do it really well,
Yep.
and that's when you get these companies like Microsoft and SpaceX and all these guys, right? And if you look at all their founders, they're very focused on one thing.
Yes.
You don't get the work-life balance. Either you can have the work-life balance, or you can really, really put all your energies into something and make it work. I don't switch off.
All the time.
I'm absolutely okay. I don't feel the need to switch off. I don't feel the need to take a break. I'm constantly working.
Which keeps you alive.
Which, yeah, it's not work for the sake
And
of
good
work.
sleep
It's towards the
report?
name.
Good sleep? You get sleep? Or is it
I
too
sleep
overrated?
peacefully. I sleep peacefully. Let me put it that way. But I don't sleep that much. I'm not built like that. There are people who sleep 8 hours.
Yeah,
Lucky them. Yes, I don't feel the need to sleep that much.
yeah.
And I like to keep working on moving things forward.
Great. My last final question is Scandron. What does it mean?
Scandron, right? So we were looking for a play, and that time we were primarily on inspections.
Yes. That's
So
how
scanning,
Yeah.
that's what drones were doing, and we came across different name combinations, and Scandron kind of is something that we all liked, and we stuck with
You
that.
stuck with it. That's a simple
Yeah,
one.
it felt
as
good.
simple as that.
It felt good, yeah.
As simple as that. And we wish you all the best on Upstream Live. Thank you,
you.
Arjun.
Thank you, Vishal. Thank you
you
for
so
having
much.
me.